Was the Qatar Grand Prix another prime example of McLaren screwing things up thanks to Papaya Rules? If Max wins his 5th championship this coming weekend, who should get the blame at McLaren? And are we about to see clarity on the future of Yuki Tsunoda? This is On Track, talkSPORT's motorsports show. I'm John Jackson, and wow, what a weekend at the Qatar Grand Prix. We're going to fully look back at the race that potentially won or lost Lando Norris the World Championship. More likely lost than won. We're also going to take a look forward to this weekend's race, the finale, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, where it'll all be decided. 3 drivers going into that final weekend with a chance of the title. And we will also look ahead to the start of something new, the new Formula E season, the final season with the Gen 3 Evo car, before we look ahead to the Gen 4 era, which is looking pretty exciting. I'm John Jackson. Joining me this week in place of our regular former driver is not a former, I don't know if you're a former driver, Lewis. I know you've driven some karts, but 2-time Simi award-winning commentator and our Formula E commentator on talkSPORT, Lewis McGlade. Have you ever won anything on the track?
Only the virtual track, I'm afraid. The real track, I'm far too big, fat and heavy.
Yeah, that's unfortunately my fault as well. So we will talk a little bit about Formula E, as you'll be calling the action, and a big announcement on the way as well about our Formula E coverage this season. But first of all, I've written notes on what happened in the race in Qatar, and also we need to talk about the sprint race and the qualifying. But I think we're just going to go straight in. Have McLaren dropped the biggest ball they possibly could have dropped? And could this decision to not pit Oscar and Lando when every other car apart from Esteban Ocon pitted, has that potentially ruined their chances of winning a world championship for one of those drivers?
I don't think it'll be the deciding factor. I think they've dropped points at various places and then gained them by having such a good car and a good driver combo. But has it cost them some serious points this late in the season? Absolutely. I think there was no doubt in my mind, especially after the performance in the sprint race, that Oscar Piastri was going to cruise to that victory. I don't think that Max would have been fast enough to properly challenge Piastri. And so the decision to not stop on that safety car, I genuinely think is baffling. Because with the way the strategy was, they had to do 2 stops over the race. They could do a maximum tyre stint of 25. At that point, it was on the 7th lap of the race. It would have been 25 laps and 25 laps. There was only 50 to go. And they didn't stop. The entire rest of the field did. I think it's a catastrophic mistake from McLaren's part not to. And I'm very curious as to the real reasons to why. Because everyone's got their theories.
And what's your theory?
I think it is the Papaya Rules thing. It's if they would have pitted both of them, then Lando would have got a very bad end of the stick. He would have most likely in the double stack been held in the box for a bit longer. He would have had a slower pit stop, probably would have come out a bit further down, maybe in 5th or 6th, somewhere a bit further down when Oscar would have kept the race lead. They don't want to have that. They see that as unfair, but then it kind of comes at the point where is Papaya Rules going to end up being the thing that ends up costing them the championship? Because if they're not careful, Max will steal the championship away.
Papaya Rules could be a film in maybe 20 years, and it's all about how McLaren ruined their best opportunity of winning a drivers' championship for the first time since, Lewis Hamilton back in the day. We'll get back to this video in just a second, but first I want to talk to you about this. This is the Nextbase Pico, and this will keep you and other people safe on the roads this festive period. It's a connected compact dash cam, which will record every single journey you make in high definition, and they've got a cheeky little offer going on at the moment, which I think you will like. Now, we know what people are like on the roads. We've all been driving to see friends and family and got cut up by someone. And maybe you're going to a racetrack and you're going to go and watch the professionals do it. And there's probably a lot of professionals not out there on the motorways of the UK. Well, look, this will record everything in high definition, sharp detail. There is a 1K and a 2K version. So whatever happens, it means you've got evidence for whatever goes on the roads. It's not just about the footage though. The Pico's packed with smart safety features that every driver needs, and of course it's from the UK's leading dashcam brand, which was recently crowned Trusted Review's best dashcam of 2025. It's super compact, even I can install it and you won't even notice it on your windscreen. Now pair it with the Nextbase app
set it up, control it from there. It couldn't be simpler for you. There's even a smart parking feature that keeps an eye on your car while you're away, automatically recording if it detects any movement or impact. And trust me, my car just got hit by something in the wind, and I'm livid because I didn't have a dash cam installed. Now, if the worst does happen, the emergency SOS system can alert emergency services and share your exact location to help you get help faster. And with Witness Mode Lite, you can quickly alert a friend or family member if you feel unsafe on the road, which is definitely something I reckon parents should be thinking about. And with prices starting at under £100, it's pretty obvious that this would make a fantastic stocking filler this festive period. And actually, you can save yourself 40 quid because between the 6th of November and the 3rd of December, you will get that amount off, making this £59 for the 1K version, which means you could probably put that 40 quid towards going and watching some UK racing. Loads of winter racing going on, which I'm sure you'll have a great time at. You could also treat your family to a meal, but let's face it, just look after yourself. So protect your journeys with confidence this festive season. Visit the NextBase website for more information, and also pop into Halfords, Argos, Currys and other retailers today. Stay safe, stay connected and enjoy the road ahead.
Let's look back at the race a little bit then, because it was a strong start from Max Verstappen. He got Lando straight away, and actually the reaction time on the screen, and by the way, I watched this in a pub in Manchester with an older fella. I didn't get his name, but as soon as things happened in the race, he was a classic kind of old, I think he was Lancastrian, just kind of shaking his head and making noises. You know, that kind of like disappointed kind of grandpa vibe. He was furious with what he saw there. He was very much a Lando fan, but the reaction time between Max and Lando wasn't actually that different. So Max just got more traction, a better start there, got quickly into second place. But it didn't take long, and it was that incident on lap 7. And I don't know about you, I was expecting a fairly boring race. Oscar had dominated this whole weekend. In fact, after the race, he said that it was possibly the best he's driven at an F1 weekend, obviously, until the race result. Lap 7, Hülkenberg and Gasly, racing incident. Do you agree with that?
I actually kind of do, but also kind of don't. I think, Gasly was getting quite a bit of understeer. Obviously, it was a risky move for Hülkenberg to go around the outside, but I do think Gasly was understeering quite a bit at the time, maybe asking a little bit too much from the front of his car, and it was Hülkenberg that paid the price. I can see why it's a racing incident, but maybe it was also a penalty. I don't know.
Well, it was deemed a racing incident by the race marshals. That's what happened there. But that brought out the safety car. And then all the cars obviously come into the pits on lap 8. And I think the commentators, and I was watching Sky Sports, I've since watched back the highlights on the F1 official, kind of seeming very confused why the McLarens didn't go straight in. But, you know, if Papaya Rules are in play, then that's it. What do you make of the comment then? I can't remember which driver it was to. I think it was to Lando, saying that they've lost all flexibility. Is that, I mean, that's just some sort of management talk plucked from somewhere to make the angry member of staff feel a little bit less angry when they're in a really angry moment, right?
Well, I mean, technically they weren't incorrect, because all of the other teams from that point on were locked on the strategy that they were on. They could not, because of the tyre rules, they could not change. They had to stop at the end of was it lap 32?
32, yeah.
And that was it. And that was the entire field had to do the exact same thing. Meanwhile, McLaren were open and they could have done. Now, let's say, for example, that a safety car had come out on lap 30. The rest of the field effectively has to wait and then pit on the second lap of the safety car, and they would have been in a really bad situation. It would have gifted McLaren a 1-2. Now, obviously, that means that the safety car has to come at a very favourable time, but it would still have been possible for that to have been the case. Now, what that would have done, again, who knows? But that's what they mean by the rest of the field has lost that flexibility. They couldn't react to anything. Of course, from a safety car perspective, nothing else really happened from that point on the race, and everyone was pretty safe, apart from obviously Hadjar on the penultimate lap with a puncture. It's kind of one of those ones of, I understand where their point of flexibility, but also I think that is them just trying to find something where they're like, well, we made the wrong call, but at least we've kept this one thing which isn't going to win us the race anyway.
Yeah, Zach Brown has come out ever since the race. I don't know if you've seen, but and apologised basically to both drivers. Interestingly, he put Oscar Piastri first of the two photos in the little thing on his Instagram post. If you want to look into more Instagram nonsense, Oscar Piastri put up a photo of him looking at the trophy and not even commenting. No comment on that at all, which I think probably says a lot. In the official interview afterwards, he used the term gut-wrenching, pointed out he'd been driving the best he's been driving, and he wants to just, all he can do next weekend in Abu Dhabi is drive as well as he's driven this past weekend. It was I mean, fascinating to watch it play out. I guess, in a way, had there been another safety car, then it would have changed a lot, because obviously Oscar Piastri would have then, if it was late on, been able to catch up to Max Verstappen when he was not catching up with him quick enough. And the chap I was watching it with was basically going, "Oh no, you need 1.2 seconds a lap there. He's not going to make that." That's probably a bit more Yorkshire than Lancastrian, but yeah, it was just one of those situations where watching it play out, the longer it went on, and I think Crofty maybe sort of made quite an obvious comment for those who hadn't quite worked out what was going on, that what the situation was and how it wasn't going to work out well for the McLarens a little bit later on. Coming back to my original question then, if next weekend Max Verstappen does what he needs to do and wins the championship, whose finger is getting pointed at for the blame? Is it going right to the top? Is it Zach Brown?
Personally, I think so. I think you have to point it a little bit towards Zach Brown. I mean, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris have both done exactly what they've needed to do pretty much all season long. The strategy, for the most part, has been pretty good. It's things like the Papaya Rules, which are enforced effectively from Zach Brown's point of view. I think that's what effectively has cost or could potentially end up costing the title. I had that thing where I said, if you had an actual number 2 driver in the team, and I mentioned, even if it was Lance Stroll as your number 2 driver in the team from the start of the season, they would have won both championships comfortably a long time ago. It's the fact that they have 2 number 1 drivers which is causing the problems, because they're both fighting over the same positions.
And Max Verstappen came out and suggested, whether tongue-in-cheek or not, that if he was in the best car, he would have wrapped the title up ages ago. And I know Lando was not too impressed by what his mate said there, but it's a good point, isn't it? Because that is what's happening at Red Bull. If that was the best car and Yuki Tsunoda was still scoring 0 to not many points, then Max Verstappen would have wrapped it up quite a long time ago, because he's gone down from over 100 points now to being just 12 points behind going into the final round, which I don't even think a supremely confident and a man who knows the ability he has, I don't think even he would have predicted that.
But some cool people amongst us did maybe predict this quite a while ago, and maybe put a round of golf on the line against Formula 3 commentator Piers Pryor. Now, I'm looking pretty happy at this at the moment. I said that Max might win the championship a couple of months ago, and Piers said absolutely not. And here we are. We've got all the way to the final round of the season, so who knows?
This proves that you can't rule Max Verstappen out. He's won as many races now as Lando and Oscar. They've all won 7 races this season, and he has come from over 100 points away to make the gap 12 points, meaning now he's second in the race. So Oscar Piastri has been demoted down into third now. He's not even joint second or third or whatever, or would be second on the amount of races he's won. No, he's now second in the fight. And if Lando slips up, and if they all crash, if they all crash doesn't work. Sorry, if Lando crashes and the other 2 just finish in the same position this weekend, then there we go. Max Verstappen wins 5 in a row, and it probably is his most impressive. Would you say it's likely? I mean, if you had to put a figure on it, normally I'd run this through ChatGPT, but I forgot to do it before to see what ChatGPT is saying.
I don't think as a man of numbers, stats, and statistics, you know me, I love looking at trends and stuff. And obviously, the trend is favouring Max, and I think he will potentially outscore Lando in the final round of the season. But Lando's in the position where he can get a podium, and it's basically done. I say basically done. It is done. If he's on the podium in Abu Dhabi, it is over. Now, I don't actually see a world where Lando doesn't finish on the podium in that season finale. I just can't see it. He's been too good, too fast, too consistent all season. The car's too good. The only thing that could maybe catch them out is, again, bad strategy like we've had here, 'cause of course he did finish off the podium in Qatar. A disqualification like we had at Vegas, which is unlikely to happen again, or a car gremlin. I don't think Lando will necessarily be the deciding factor as to whether they finish on the podium or not. I think it'd be some outside factor if he wasn't to.
We've had very reliable cars. I mean, we talked about this, Piers and I, on a previous show, just how reliable F1 cars are these days. You remember you used to see engines sort of have oil spilling out of the back and a big plume of smoke. That just doesn't really happen anymore because the cars are so reliable. Normally it's a tyre situation or maybe a bit of suspension failing or something like that. So you never know. This is why it's so exciting going into this final round. While you just spoke there, I have run this through the supercomputer. We don't have a talkSPORT supercomputer. Unfortunately, there's no statistician at talkSPORT. So we do rely on the free trial of ChatGPT. And ChatGPT is saying that Lando has a 40% chance of winning. Oscar has a 30% chance of winning, and Max has a 25% chance of winning. So the supercomputer...
Who's got a 5% chance of winning?
It says others. I think
there's no one else in it.
The more I go down this list, I think we discount ChatGPT. If we've learned one thing in this show today, you can't trust ChatGPT. What are they on about there?
Yeah, right.
Playing that. The others. I mean, what are they going to get disqualified? And you never know. There's never a zero chance. Maybe they could somehow get disqualified from the entire season, all three of them.
Happened to Michael Schumacher in 1997.
Yeah,
I think it was. He tried to intentionally wreck Jacques Villeneuve at Jerez all those times ago. Got disqualified from the season. So yeah, it could happen.
Let's take a look then at some of the other drivers that did incredibly well, and it's hard to look past Carlos Sainz, isn't it? Because I mean, what a drive from him! He was on the podium in third place in Azerbaijan, and he's back on there now. And I don't know whether he would have expected that in his first season at Williams, because we know what he's been through. We saw on Drive to Survive the heartache he had when he had to make way for Lewis Hamilton, and Williams was the best choice he had on the table and probably not the choice he would have wanted to have gone to.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know how vocal I can be about some of the drivers in Formula One. Have been on this podcast a few times. Carlos is someone I cannot criticize. I think he is a fantastic driver. He's proven that time and time again. There were a couple of lumps and bumps when he was at Ferrari that didn't quite work his way, and I do think it was the right decision for Ferrari. You know, when you get the chance to get Lewis Hamilton, that obviously it has to be Sainz to go. And it was the grace that he took that with that almost made me become a proper out and out Carlos Sainz fan, because he took it with such maturity. And like you say, he's signed for Williams at the start of the year, and maybe that's not a team that he wants to drive. Obviously, he wants to be driving for Ferrari. But he's taken that Williams now have a really solid lineup, in my opinion, between Carlos and Alex. And they've proven that all the way through this season. A car which very clearly is not a massively competitive force in Formula One. Don't get me wrong, it's not an awful car, realistically speaking, but it's not a car which is going to get you a championship or anything like that. The fact they've come out of it with a couple of podiums for Carlos is amazing. The fact they've now secured 5th in the Constructors' Championship, I think that is a huge achievement. James Vowles was very emotional on the radio as well to Carlos at the end of the race, almost brought a tear to my eye. I think it's amazing. I think it's a really good story seeing Carlos on the podium here. Yeah,
I think you have to look at what James Vowles has done there. For him, he's jumped ship from a very successful team to then go and lead the resurgence in Williams, who... I think if you grew up, certainly when I grew up watching F1 in the 90s, you probably have a soft spot. If not, you support Williams because of what they achieved back then. And, synonymous with Damon Hill, for example, when we spoke to him at the F1 exhibition, you could see his race suits there. And it was it made me remember being a kid watching F1. And to watch him go in there and sort of turn this struggling team around, obviously a lot of money and investments come with that, but you need a strong leader. And he seems like the kind of guy, and I've been lucky enough to chat to him a couple of times on this channel. He is a guy that seems very straight with people, and I can imagine, and we saw a little bit of it on Drive to Survive, how he negotiated with Carlos Sainz and how he positioned everything to Carlos Sainz. And I think Carlos, it was, I was going to say a leap of faith. Carlos didn't have many choices on the table, but I think he will be surprised by what they've achieved. The big question is now, going into the new regulations in 2026 and having had this success, how they move on. I mean, do you have any sort of thoughts on how Williams progress from here? They've got the drivers, they've got the team principal, they've certainly got a lot of expertise, and they've got financial backing now, but it's quite hard to make that next jump and be even further competitive to the podium most of the time, because we have quite a lot of close racing.
But generally speaking, the easiest time to make that jump, relatively speaking, is in regulation changes. So Williams are one of those teams where you can definitely see them making the right call in the regulations and jumping their way forward. But then for them to jump forward, someone else has to jump backwards. And who would that be? Does that mean that McLaren aren't going to make a good car next season? Is they're going to drop? But that's the thing of Formula One, is that the underdogs rise to the top and then become the winning force. Someone else has to fall in with that. Now, you could say in recent times that has been McLaren. In the current generation, they started it out with arguably the worst car of all of the 10 on the field in 2022, and they've ended this regulation with the best car, or certainly between them and Red Bull have been the best car the last couple of years. I think it's definitely been the McLaren the last 2 years as the best car. Someone's going to make those jumps. We just don't know who that team's going to be. There's a lot of people and finger pointing that maybe this is what Lewis Hamilton has seen when he signed for Ferrari, because obviously that's what happened with Mercedes when he signed in 2013, 2014, the regulation change.
Some would argue, Lewis. Some would argue that his recent demeanour and him saying he's not looking forward to next year would suggest he's not seen what he wants to see more recently. So he may have what he's been promised may not have come to fruition. Do you agree?
I do. I can see that Ferrari struggling again. I don't. I like the Ferrari team. I like who they've got in it. When it comes to the drivers, how the team's managed and stuff. I think there's a lot of positives there. But I think much like some other places in sport and stuff, just because you've got a load of really good ingredients doesn't mean that the team's going to be great. And I think that's the problem that Ferrari have, is that there's something in there which isn't quite right, and no one could put their finger on exactly what it is. And with that being the case, it's kind of infecting the whole team, where they're all basically down a whole step on where they really should be.
Yeah, you're referring to the cake there, which is a good point to shout out James Headley, former FIA F3 driver, who very much explained the cake to me as a racing driver. And it's basically, if you've got all the ingredients, you can make a good cake. But if one of the ingredients is, I think he described it as something that you might find on a pavement after a dog's walk past, then the cake's not going to be very good. And that makes perfect sense. Obviously, with Ferrari then, Charles Leclerc coming 8th, Lewis Hamilton coming 12th. There was one moment where the chap I watched this with in the bar in Manchester sort of celebrated because Lewis Hamilton had made up a place, and that was because Isaac Hadjar got a puncture and he'd dropped back down. And I think then he realised and went, oh, okay. He thought he'd overtaken someone, but unfortunately it was through someone else's misfortune. I noticed in the interview that Charles Leclerc did after the race that he almost seems to have caught the kind of vibe of Lewis Hamilton. Charles Leclerc's normally at least diplomatic, but he looked pretty dejected. And they were saying, you want a good performance to end the season on a high. And he was like, yeah, I kind of want to go on my holiday feeling good about things. And I imagine, much like Lewis, he can't wait for this season to end. But if they have seen something behind the scenes that suggests that the Ferrari car isn't going to be good next year, big questions on whether Charles Leclerc has to make a big decision. I'm not entirely sure when his contract is up. I'm sure it's probably long-term at Ferrari, but he's going to want to win a world championship at some point. And every year he's getting further and further away from that. If Adrian Newey's made an amazing car at Aston Martin and they need to replace Fernando Alonso after the end of next year, he's a pretty good choice.
Absolutely. And I think Charles Leclerc's a quality driver. I made this point a couple of years ago that some, especially at the start of this regulation of car, somehow between Charles Leclerc and Ferrari, they seem to just mess up races more than any other car team combo. Now that's less so this year because I think they've been in contention for a lot less. But there was a point where when Charles it would have been in 2022, where either the car would fail, the team would fail on strategy, or Charles would bin it. And it was a very frustrating time to kind of watch that. And I'm sure even for those diehard Ferrari fans, it was very difficult. But obviously, he's a quality driver, and like you say, he has got that base formula to become a world champion. I don't think many people have the doubt. He's got the speed, he's got the consistency, but I fear that each year goes by with the team not being there to kind of give him a race winning, a championship contending car, that his mentality falters that little bit more, and that little bit more that maybe one time when they do have the car available, that mentally he won't be. And that is a fear that a lot of drivers have come across in their careers, I'm sure, where they're ready at completely the wrong time, and then they're just not able to do it.
When you say about McLaren having two number one drivers, Ferrari also have, I know Charles is probably their favourite, but they have two number one drivers, i.e. they have two drivers that can win the championship. The difference is in McLaren is if you've got two drivers that actually have a chance of winning the championship, and at Ferrari you've got two drivers that haven't got a hope of winning the championship, which is a whole new situation. Coming back to the McLaren situation, whatever plays out here, I feel like Oscar has a decision to make at some point in the future as well, because we know that Lando is, Zach Brown has very much nurtured Lando through the last however many years. Everyone says he's his favourite. I'm not going to say he's his favourite, but I'm going to say there's obvious reasons why he might be his favourite. It's just speculation. For Oscar, if he doesn't win the championship this year, which we know from ChatGPT, he's got a 15% chance of winning now, he's potentially going to have a decision to make in the future as well, because it doesn't look like Lando is likely to go anywhere anytime soon.
Lando, I'm pretty sure will be McLaren until, maybe even until he leaves Formula One. Who knows? He is good. He is McLaren through and through. Oscar less so. He's not even been in Formula One for that long, and yet he can open up. He can kind of go where he wants. I do really get that feeling. He's a quality driver, and I do agree with what a lot of people say. There's a lot of things that kind of do seem as though McLaren and Zach Brown are very much leaning towards the biases of Lando Norris. I understand that. I see that. There's too many things. I'm sure Oscar is also seeing and hearing and feeling all of that as well. I can definitely see him jumping ship, but I don't necessarily believe that is the root cause of him losing this World Championship, because I think a lot of that comes to the enormous slump that Oscar has had in his own pace and consistency the last basically 6 or 7 races until here at Qatar, where he has been by far the fastest driver. And he said it was his best drive in Formula One. I think you can even remove the result from that. I think it was his best drive. It was near perfect. The only thing that went wrong was strategy, which wasn't his call.
Let's take a look back at some of the other drivers that either impressed or had nightmare weekends at the Qatar Grand Prix. Mercedes have been actually quite strong recently, haven't they? It's that situation where George Russell has kind of done nothing. I say nothing. He's driving a Formula One car at massive speeds, but he's done nothing out of the ordinary and just been incredibly consistent. Piers has been banging on this whole season about how George Russell is the second best driver this season just because of his consistency. Thoughts on that? He finished 6th in this race.
But I think it was a 6th that the only thing that he necessarily did wrong in the race was he had a bad start. Outside of that was kind of dropped back courtesy of it was his double stack, wasn't it, in the pit lane when everyone came in, because everyone had to come in because no one was pulling a ridiculous strategy like not pitting under the safety car. And so Mercedes came in, they double stacked, and George got a bad stop which would have gone Kimi Antonelli's way had George not had a bad start to the race. So either way, one of their drivers was going to get messed over by the safety car in the pit lane. But it's one of those things. I think George has been honestly pretty fantastic this season. I can barely fault him. Sometimes I complain a little bit about how he is in the radio because he can be a bit loud and wishy-washy. But honestly, from a driving perspective, he's been absolutely phenomenal this season.
He was getting a bit of his own medicine, wasn't he? Turn 10. I can't remember who it was actually. Who was shouting him out, saying on turn 10 he was going wide?
Charles Leclerc. Yeah. It's because he was going. There's a bit. Turn 10 is a left-hand hairpin. There's a bit on the right-hand side as you turn into it. Yeah, that you can kind of drive over, and they can't do anything about it because it's effectively an escape road and also part of an alternate layout at Qatar.
Right.
So it is just what it is. And the drivers, boy, they were using it.
Oh, they were using it. I think Lando was using it a couple of times as well. Really bad luck. Obviously for Mercedes, still Kimi Antonelli and George Russell 5th and 6th. Obviously Lando got past him towards the end there. I didn't think we actually really saw it on the broadcast, but it looked like Kimi just let him go. I don't think he would have ever just let him go, but it certainly didn't look like a struggle for Lando. Did you see a replay of that?
I didn't. I think my gut feeling is it was just a mistake because it was through turn 15, if I remember correctly, the penultimate corner. And I think he would have had a moment there, quite a big wiggle. Obviously, he's pushing it to its absolute limit. They were closing in on Carlos Sainz, so the downforce was a little bit lower on the car. They were losing a bit of grip. I think he was just pushing a little bit too hard on tyres, which were going off. And that was just the opportunity that Lando needed on fresher tyres. I don't think there's anything more than that. I don't think there's any conspiracy there that Mercedes is trying to help McLaren win the title. Although George did say that he was trying to give the slipstream in the sprint race to Lando, and then that caused a kerfuffle because he was trying to help him win the championship, or whatever it was that he said in the interview. Well, it wasn't in the interviews. It was kind of hearsay in the paddock. But it was an interesting clip.
Imagine Lando wins the title by 2 points. 2 points difference between that different positions. Anyway, Ollie Behrman, very impressive this season. I've enjoyed watching him. Very disappointing though. 10-second penalty, and then he ended up not finishing the race. And I didn't know what had happened at the start because he looked like he'd come out of his pit stop and just stopped. And I thought, oh, has he stalled the car? What's happened? But was it left rear wheel wasn't on?
Yeah,
and they don't take kindly to that at all. And you saw the frustration from Ollie Behrman, kind of repeatedly punching his steering wheel while he was going down the pit lane on the limit.
Behrman would have known that penalty was coming. It was a stop and go 10 seconds. So not come into the pit lane when you're doing your pit stop and it's 10 seconds added onto your race at the end or added onto a pit stop. It is you're coming in to the pit lane and stopping for 10 seconds and then going, and you can do nothing else in that time. You can't pit the car or anything like that. It's probably one of the more serious penalties we can get outside of a disqualification. So it's pretty serious, and that's because it's one that can endanger your pit crew, and that's what it's all about. For Ollie, it will feel really harsh because he will feel like the car was dropped, that the light went green, and then he went, which most of us would do. But the thing is, with a penalty like that, yes, it's a penalty for the driver, but it's actually a penalty for the team. It's a team sport at the end of the day. Those mechanics, Ollie, whatever, something went fundamentally wrong and it put people in danger. And so they're avoiding that, because you've got to imagine the amount of torque on the rear wheels. If that wheel is not secured, it's getting flung off. Now, we didn't get a rear camera of what happened, but certainly from the onboard, you saw the car really drop down. That could have flung that tyre off absolutely anywhere. So they're pretty harsh on it in Formula One, that if the wheel nuts are not tight, there is a serious penalty.
Well, rightfully so, I think, because, not a good situation. A lot of talk about the tyres going into this race with the 25-lap limit. Obviously, it's kind of weird, actually, knowing where everyone was going to go into their pit stops, but at the same time, I quite enjoyed that as maybe a one-off. Isack Hadjar has been really impressive this season, let's face it. For him to then not finish because he gets a puncture late on, heartbreaking for him. Now, the rumours in the paddock are that there's going to be a Red Bull announcement this week, okay? Now, there's a lot of talk about the Red Bull drivers. They're the 3 drivers, along with Max Verstappen, that have not been announced yet. If you are Red Bull, why would you be announcing your lineup or any change to your lineup ahead of your final race unless it was one of your drivers' final races? Maybe even 2 of your drivers' final races. And that would lead me to believe that we're going to get confirmation this coming week that Isack Hadjar will step up, replace Yuki Tsunoda, and it will be a farewell message. Thank you very much, Yuki. Yuki's will be leaving Red Bull after his final race this weekend. Can you say anything different? Because I don't think you can.
I genuinely cannot. I think Yuki is a great character. We've seen that. He's always a good laugh in the paddock. Is he good enough to be in that Red Bull, though? That's the big question. And results-wise, if you're just speaking clearly of results, yes, Max Verstappen is one of the greatest of all time. A lot of people say he's the greatest of our generation and blah, 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 all this, that, and the other. At a bare minimum, you've got to be up there in the top 5s, podiums, whatever, along with Max. And Yuki simply hasn't been. And so I think, Yuki's out of the team. Whether he'll stay in Formula One somewhere else, I don't see that happening, unless it's in a reserve role. And Isack Hadjar has been such a good driver this season. I think it's a pretty simple slam dunk. Hadjar's going to the Red Bull. I don't know what's going to happen with Liam Lawson, but I definitely think it's Hadjar's time to move up, and I think he's ready.
I think he's ready as well. It's funny to think of the start of the season where what happened in Australia and seeing him crying there with Hamilton's dad, and seeing where he is now, and just seeing the mental strength he's had this season to continue to perform. I'd obviously be very upset after what happened in Qatar, but I think bigger things are coming for him. And I hope that he can be the second driver that Max Verstappen is needed for a while now. And we know that you mentioned there that Yuki may not find another seat in Formula One. We've got loads of good drivers, banging on the door. Felipe Drugovich couldn't get a drive in Formula One after winning the F2 series. So can Leo Fornaroli get a Formula One drive in the next couple of years after winning the F2 title this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say it because I've said it quite a few times, but I'm gonna mention it again. I think the rule where Formula 2 drivers, or if you win the Formula 2 championship and then you cannot do Formula 2 again, I think that ruins more careers than it saves. I understand what it's there to do. It's there to encourage you to, well, I say encourage. It's there to you're forced to move on to the next step. Now, I think when you look at a few drivers like Drugovich, like even Oscar Piastri, he then couldn't do the next season, had to sit out a whole year before driving for McLaren the year after. Even going back to 2012 when Davide Valsecchi won, Fabio Lima then won the year after. All these drivers have won the title, at a very prestigious level, and then they can't do the season again. And there's no seats open in Formula One. There's no seats open in Formula E. There's no seats open. There's obviously some in WEC. There's not much in IndyCar. You're kind of sat there where you're like, I actually have nowhere to go. And there's no other second category in the world, whether it's Indy Next, even the NASCAR Xfinity Series, Dunlop Super 2, Moto 2. There's no second category in the world other than Formula 2, as far as I'm aware, that stops the driver from doing a second season where they have to prove themselves again. And I think Fornaroli might be in a bit of trouble where I don't actually see where he can go.
I think obviously Formula E, are hoping with their Gen 4 car to snap up more F2 drivers that need an option, because huge advancements with the Gen 4 car, which you can check out on the talkSPORT driving YouTube channel if you want to see it more of an explainer. But you've got Pepe Marti who's coming across. I know he wasn't a title contender, but you had Taylor Barnard from a year before, and obviously Dan Tickton back in the day moved from F2 across to Formula E because they didn't see a path to Formula One. I think he for Fornaroli, he's got to hope that, having won F3 straight to winning F2, super impressive. It's one of those situations where if Lewis Hamilton was to retire at the end of next year, then, there's a Behrman moving up. Maybe Haas need a driver. Maybe that works out. Italian, Ferrari, it all adds up. But then you've got so many other drivers that will have impressed by then, and you may have other drivers that have moved around with the big kind of driver move around that we're expecting at the end of 2026 when they start to work out which cars are good and which are bad for this generation. So yeah, hopefully not, and hopefully he does get a fair opportunity, but at the moment it's looking like a tricky one. But anyway, let's let him enjoy that success, and it's been a great season for him this year, and all the other drivers he was competing against certainly put on a good show this year. Been great watching F2. Adrian Newey is the final thing I want to talk to you about before we head on to our Formula E chat. Adrian Newey will take over 2026 team principal of Aston Martin, and they're kind of moving into that sort of situation that has worked well for McLaren, where you've got different people doing different things, and they've decided that Andy Cowell's not the right person for that. He's going to be doing more of the sort of schmoozing and more of the technical stuff, that one side. Adrian Newey is the best placed person to be leading the team. Is this a big ruse because they've got a big plan to bring in someone who Adrian Newey might know quite well when he's allowed to come into Formula One after his gardening leave? Or is Adrian Newey genuinely the best person to be a team principal, given that every second he's not working on car design, which is his strength and what he's made his name and a serious amount of money for doing? That seems like a stupid move to me.
It is a bizarre one. When I read it, I was like, I feel like there's more to this. This can't be as simple as, yes, Adrian Newey is going to become the team principal, when it's away from, like you say, from car design, from what he's known for and what it's good for. That said, I think realistically, without looking at conspiracy and like that, you have to take the announcement at face value, which is, let's say, for example, that is completely true, that he is going to become the team principal. Is he the right person for it? Now, he's been in Formula One for quite a long time, quite a few decades. He has been in and around Formula One, designing world championship winning Formula One cars. If there's someone who has never done team principal, that as a job, that could probably step into it and do a pretty solid job, I think Newey is one. Now, I know there was that interview from a few years ago from Christian Horner where he was saying that basically Adrian Newey's not really a people person. It's not really a managerial point of view that he could do. Obviously, he needs to stick to car design. And whilst I do understand where that's coming from, I think he's got a good knowledge as to what it takes to win a world championship as an entire team. That said, I do agree. I think there is way more to it.
This is On Track, talkSPORT's weekly motorsport show. You can check us out on talkSPORT 2 every Tuesday from 2 p.m, then straight after on the talkSPORT podcast network at your leisure. And you can watch the show on the talkSPORT Driving YouTube channel. Make sure you hit subscribe, hit that little bell as well. You'll get a notification every time we upload a video. I'm John Jackson, joined this week by our Formula E commentator, Lewis McGlade, as we look forward to a brand new season in the All-Electric Championship. It's season 12, and most importantly, it's the last season of the Gen 3 era. We've had 2 years of the Gen 3 car. We've then had one season so far of the Gen 3 Evo car. And we've already had a sneak peek at Gen 4, which will start in the end of 2026. But for now, we are here, and I mean, the Gen 3 development, when we have these 4-year cycles in Formula E, as we do in any motorsport, Lewis, the further you get along in that cycle, the closer the cars are. And Formula E is already very close racing. So I think this year, in terms of who's going to win the title, how many names do you want to suggest? 10?
This is one of the interesting ones that I was talking about with a couple of mates earlier in the week. That you go into a season of Formula One and you think, well, there's like 3 or 4 drivers that you can see winning the championship, sometimes even less than that, right? And you go into it and you think, cool, that's that. Even through preseason testing, I kind of understand how things are going. In Formula E, there's a reason we have had 10 different champions in 11 years, right? And the reason why I can absolutely see that being 11 from 12, because some of the drivers that haven't won the championship, your likes of especially Cassidy and Evans, for example, I can definitely see them winning the title. Taylor Barnard as well is another one to chuck in there at DS Penske. There's so many drivers where I'm looking at thinking they can win a title and they haven't won one yet, but something inside makes me think we're going to get a repeat winner this year.
Yeah, I do as well. We're going to run through it. If you're brand new to Formula E, if you've come across from other motorsports or you're just checking it out for the first time, very, very simple. There are 10 teams competing this year in the championship, 2 drivers in each team. It's an all-electric championship, and it has been since its inception, net zero from day zero. It's all about fast, close racing, but also sustainability. And Formula E is history, and this may change going forward, but it's always been on street circuits, and we've seen some epic races around some huge world cities. My favorite one used to be Rome, but unfortunately, I think it cost quite a lot to close down pretty central Rome to race around, and we've seen some epic racing and also some pretty epic smashes, and I think that maybe led to them going, well, this is maybe a little bit not right for the new car. It's a bit too fast here. When we look at the teams, there'll be teams that you might recognize, like Andretti, for example, and teams you may know nothing about, like Mahindra, who are a huge Indian automotive company and seriously investing in the future. They've just committed to Gen 4 as well. Looking at some of the drivers who can potentially win the championship, first of all, if it is to be a new driver, as you've suggested there, then you would look at the person that finished second in the championship last year. That's Nick Cassidy. He's been at Jaguar TCS Racing for a couple of seasons, and he's now moved across to a brand new team, which has come from the ashes of a former team, as often happens in motorsports, Citroën Formula E team, alongside Jean-Eric Vergne, a man who certainly knows what it's like to win a Formula E title, and you may know him from back in the Formula One days as well. I think for Nick Cassidy, though, keeping that form that he had last year, especially in the second half of the season, going into a brand new team and a brand new setup, where he told me at testing he's had to learn a bit of French because most of the people there are French. There's a lot of learning going on, and it feels like coming straight into that season, it might be a tough ask for him.
I think it might be a little bit of a tall order for Cassidy to be the one. If I was leaning to anyone that was obviously in and around the contention point over the last couple of years, I'd actually lean a little bit more towards a Mitch Evans remaining at Jaguar TCS Racing, and of course somewhere he's been pretty comfortable since the very start of his Formula E career. I'd lean a little bit more his way to maybe find that form. But Cassidy had such impressive form. He's on 3 in a row. Now, I've built a brand new spreadsheet, John, as you know me, and I love my stats, statistics, and spreadsheets. 3 in a row is the most any driver has ever done in Formula E's history. Now, Cassidy then, on 3 in a row at the moment, could technically make it 4 in a row if he's able to win the Sao Paulo E-Prix on Saturday. I just don't know if it's going to be the case. I don't think it's going to click immediately, but I do think one of the 17 races, absolutely, Cassidy is going to win.
Yeah, I think it's a high chance. Jean-Eric Vergne's teammate, the only person that's won the championship twice so far. You've suggested we might see a repeat winner. Now, at the moment, Oliver Rowland, who's a British driver from Barnsley, very normal guy, very unassuming, not the kind of Monaco type of guy that you might expect to see in motorsport. Just had a second child, very settled, moved to the Middle East with his partner. He's got 2 kids, just, your everyday kind of guy. He's the current champion. He could win again. Been very, very strong with the Nissan Formula E team, and certainly seems to click with that team, having stepped away and then returned there and kind of feels like his home. But then you look at some of the other drivers, Pascal Wehrlein, who's with Porsche and has been there or thereabouts after winning the championship the year before. He would be a good shout to win the championship again. I'm going to look down the list and say probably, Jake Dennis. I feel that Jake Dennis, who's got a new teammate this year, might have some extra impetus and someone who's fighting him harder, which might actually push Jake into that zone where he is like when he won the championship in season 9, he's on the money every single weekend, and barring some bad luck along the way, could become a double champion. And obviously that driver alongside him is someone that we've already mentioned, Felipe Drugovich, who's now got a new home. What do you make of that partnership?
I think it's interesting. Obviously, Drugovich being a rookie, kind of, you don't really know necessarily where they're going to go when it comes to rookies. But let's be honest, the last proper rookie that we had in Formula E was Taylor Barnard, and he impressed everyone by basically blowing a lot of the drivers out of the water. And I think Drugovich is in that kind of camp where I definitely think he could be good enough to do so. But let's be honest, one of those two is going to be contending for a championship. You would have to say it's going to be Jake. I'll chuck another driver who could win a second championship into the ring. I think Antonio Felix da Costa. He's one of the drivers that's done the whole 3 race victories in a row. He's taken part for a new team for him, Jaguar TCS Racing. I mentioned it earlier. I think he's in a good shout. If that Jaguar is quick like it was at the end of last season, I think he's in a great position to potentially win a second title.
Yeah, Jaguar TCS Racing have been impressive over the years, but one thing that's evaded them has been the drivers' title. They've won the team's championship. The drivers' championship is something that's evaded them, but has also evaded Mitch Evans. And there's a lot of thought and talk in the paddock already after testing that this may be Mitch's final year to win the drivers' championship for Jaguar, because after this year, he may fancy a fresh challenge. So a lot going on Mitch Evans this year. Of course, we look ahead to this first race of the season in Brazil this coming weekend. And I mean, Mitch Evans last year, he did something that's very rarely done in motorsports.
Yeah, one from last. Absolutely incredible drive. I mean, a breathtaking race. I think... I mean, he has certain circuits that he seems to click at. I think you're disappointed that Rome's not on the calendar anymore. I think the only person who's probably more disappointed is Mitch Evans, because he used to be mega at Rome. By the way, the win from last on the grid, that's, as far as I'm aware, when I was going to the stats, has never happened in Formula E.
I think someone's won from maybe second last before, but not from last. Or I can't remember. I think there might be something that's happened. I can't remember, but let's just say that. Let's take that for fact. That, I mean, that's a seriously impressive start to a season. And then, unfortunately for Mitch, he had an absolute stinker of a season after that. So it was like this huge success after, I mean, if you're a Formula E fan, you'll know this, but after, going into the final weekend of the year with a chance to win the championship, and his teammate Nick Cassidy at the time having a chance to win the championship, and then neither of them winning the championship that day, there was a lot of stress. I've, heard that maybe that Mitch, didn't contact anyone from the team for over a month after that. Like, there was no contact. That's how much space he needed from the situation. So, I think this is why we're on a bit of a sort of a knife edge of Mitch wins a championship and leaves, or leaves and looks for a new opportunity elsewhere. So that's fascinating. Another new driver on the grid is Pepe Marti. Moved across from F2 to partner Dan Ticktum at, I don't want to call them the banter team, because that makes them sound like not successful. And they won a race last year, Cupra Kiro. I say banter because they are the ones on social media that if you're not a Formula E fan, you've probably seen their social media already, because it seems to pop up. They're very inventive and they're very tongue-in-cheek with what they say. However, that's another underrated, or maybe not underrated, but maybe sort of a dark horse driver lineup to do pretty well this season, because they've got a Porsche powertrain. Porsche's been one of the strongest powertrains over the last couple of years or so. You've got Dan Ticktum, who now has tasted the podium, he's tasted the race win, and you've got a young, hungry F2 driver that's moved across, very much like what Taylor Barnard did last season, who wants to challenge him. Seems like a recipe for success.
It's one that I'm very curious about, because I did think when Pepe Marti got announced for the team, I was like, that's a bit of an odd call. Maybe someone that I probably wouldn't have necessarily suggested that I was expecting Pepe Marti to go. But do you know what? I like it. I like some of the bold calls that team managers make. I like the calls to move for a driver to move out of the Formula One career ladder limelight and go, do you know what? I'm actually going to try my career somewhere else. It's quite brave to do, and I think it's a good shout. I think it's a pretty solid team, and very curious to see how Marti gets along. I think Ticktum's going to have a great season.
Yeah, I hope so. It's one of those interesting things where we can't actually predict much here. We can talk about who should do well, but Formula E is so close that it's very unpredictable. Just a couple of other drivers I want to touch upon, and one of them is a title potential title winner for a second time. That is Nick de Vries, who alongside Eden Mortara at Mahindra had a really good end to the season. 2 second place finishes at the end of last season in London, and Mahindra have taken huge strides forward. Outside chance to win another title, knowing how well Nick knows this championship, having won the title back in 2021. Hang on, 2022.
He was the first world champion.
Yes, the first world champion, yes.
Yeah, there was season 7, so it was 2020, 2021. I think Nick de Vries is a great shout. But again, it's too unpredictable. I have a fear that Mahindra will go into it with a lot of confidence after how they finished last season, and maybe something won't click immediately. And that's the thing. I think a lot of the teams have this feeling that you need to click immediately in Formula E. And I think Ollie Rowland proved that last year that you didn't, because he scored 0 points from the opening race of the season and then still absolutely dominated the competition. So I don't know why I get that vibe that I think Mahindra are a team that get into their own head a little bit. But I do get that vibe a little bit.
You never know. And also, finally, welcome to Joel Eriksson, who has driven in a Formula E race or two before, but he joins now full-time with Envision alongside Seb Buemi, who last year won his first race for, I think it was 7 years, another former champion in Formula E. So he certainly knows how to do it, and it'll be interesting to see whether Envision can have a better season than they had last year, because on the whole, it was a very disappointing season for them. Also, drivers we not mentioned, Nico Müller has stepped up to be alongside Pascal Wehrlein at the Porsche team. I think that was always going to happen. Lucas de Grassi alongside Zayn Maloney at Lola Yamaha Apt. Lucas de Grassi got some points last year. Zayn Maloney still hasn't got a single point yet. So I think that could be a bit of pressure on Zayn Maloney early on. And obviously Maximilian Gunther alongside Taylor Barnard at DS Penske. Could be a good partnership. I'm not entirely sure how well they get on. It's going to be fascinating to see. You can obviously watch this on ITV and also TNT in the United Kingdom. And for the first time this season, you can listen to every single race on the talkSPORT network. So we're going to have selected races on talkSPORT 2, such as this Saturday, where you can listen straight after our championship doubleheader at 5 p.m. And you'll also be able to watch every single race on a watch along on the talkSPORT YouTube channel as well, where you'll get to see Lewis alongside your co-host. And I think it's a revolving co-host, but I think this weekend it's a very familiar face to Formula E viewers and listeners, Saunders Carmichael Brown, where you'll be talking us through the action, and you'll be able to watch that and see all the stats on the talkSPORT Driving YouTube channel and the talkSPORT main YouTube channel as well. So more opportunities for you to see and listen to Formula E this season on the talkSPORT network. It all starts at 5 p.m. on Saturday afternoon on both the talkSPORT YouTube channel and talkSPORT 2. Finally, Lewis, I'm not going to ask you for a driver's champion this year, but I'm just going to ask you, will we see another champion that has not won it before, or do you think it's going to be a repeat?
My gut says repeat. I think we're going to have someone win the championship for the second or third time.
Will it be a British driver? Good chance. Could be Jake Dennis, could be Oliver Rowland.
I actually don't think it will be either of them.
I think you have a name in mind of who you think is going to win.
Maybe. I'm gonna double down. I actually think it might be Antonio Felix da Costa.
Okay, that would be good for him. It's been a tough road for him for the last few years. Obviously, joining Jaguar TCS Racing alongside Mitch Evans. If that does happen, think of the heartbreak for Mitch Evans that someone else has come into that team and won the championship before him after coming so close for so many years. Anyway, this is what Formula E is all about. It is the pinnacle of electric racing. And as I say, 5 p.m. on Saturday afternoon on talkSPORT 2 and also the talkSPORT YouTube channel as well. You can watch and listen to the first race of the season in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Thank you very much to Lewis McGlade for joining me this week on this show. We'll be back next Tuesday where we will unpack and discuss what happens in the final race weekend of the Formula One season, and also, of course, what happens in that first Formula E race of the season as well. We're going to have a brand new champion in Formula One the next time we speak. Thanks for watching. Of course, if you missed any of this show, catch up on the talkSPORT Podcast Network and on the talkSPORT Driving YouTube channel.